could, I'd pick her up and bring her up here with me.
Time for a meeting. I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notices of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Good evening, everybody. This evening we're going to start with an invocation from John Metter of Cross City Church. If you can please stand.
By the way, as we stand, thank you so much for your hard work as board members, administrators of HEB Independent School District. Let's bow together in prayer. Father, we thank you so much for the privilege of being here today, and thank you so much for the work of these board members and administrators, the teachers of this school district. Thank you so much for their investment into the next generations. Thank you for the parents here, the students here. And Father, we pray that you'll protect them and give them direction in the days ahead. Allow them to maximize the time that they have, not only tonight, but day to day in school. And Father, I pray that you'll bring success to these students as they strive to be the best anywhere, Father, and as they move to the next level of their education beyond the high schools. Father, I pray that you'll protect us during these days and also allow us to remember the celebration of Christmas, what it's all about. Father, thank you for your presence. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
And next we will have our Pledge of Allegiance. Two students from Hurst Junior High, Abigail Patillo and Abdul Yafani. Go ahead and stand over here. Just go ahead and get it started. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, if you two will stay up here for just a second, I have something for you. All right, this one is for Abdul. Here you go. And they're going to want to take pictures of you right there. Yeah, you can have your family come up take pictures, and we'll take some pictures. Let's see, where's my... Okay, Abdul is an amazing young man. Abdul has attended Hurst Junior High for 3 years and has worked hard in the classroom every day, exemplified by having already earned high school credits entering the 9th grade year. Abdul has been involved in choir, helping lead the program to 1 ratings in each of the last 2 years. Abdul has been a great representative for Hurst Junior High by always displaying exemplary character. Abigail. There you go. Abigail is an outstanding 9th grade student who successfully balances taking AP, GT, and advanced academics. She has maintained an A average in all classes all 3 years, while also playing 9th grade volleyball for Hurst Junior High and softball for Bell High School. Additionally, Abigail is president of the HJH National Junior Honor Society. Abigail has a great attitude, a great work ethic, and is an awesome role model for all students at Hurst Junior High. Thank you. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a work session and in its regularly scheduled monthly meeting to officially act on items included on the posted agenda. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be 2 open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if a person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner, and asks that all speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. All right, Mr. Chapman, any superintendent comments?
You know, I do have several things I want to mention this evening. First of all, I want to start with our senior breakfast. Last Wednesday, we had the opportunity to welcome about approximately 70 of our community members to join us for breakfast, prepared by our culinary arts department, and that's something we've done for the last several years. Those seniors are folks who no longer have children in our schools, and we think it's important for them to have the opportunity to come in and hear about what's happening in the district. So they got the opportunity to be treated to a show by Trinity's Harmony Show Choir, Christmas show, as well as hear from our performance from our Suzuki Strings. We had a little over 100 Suzuki students who were there to perform. And then hear a quick update on our 2018 bond, as well as an update on the new programming at the Gene Buinger Career and Technical Education Academy. So it was a great event, and I want to personally thank Deanne Hollander, who is our Chief Public Relations and Marketing Office, and her staff for organizing and facilitating and hosting that event. So it was a great success. Also, I received an email over the weekend, and I wanted to highlight some of our Trinity High School students, and this email was from Euless Mayor Linda Martin. She said that each year the Salvation Army has one Saturday designated as the Mayoral Challenge, and this past Saturday, mayors and their helpers were ringing the bells in support of the Salvation Army. And we had 6 musicians from Trinity High School who volunteered to add extra special excitement while Euless Mayor Linda Martin rang the bell by providing entertainment. So I want to recognize those students. I think that's wonderful that those 6 Trinity High School band students chose to spend their Saturday there in support of the Salvation Army, in support of the Euless Mayor. So thank you to those students. And then I'm pleased to announce that this Wednesday, several of us will be traveling to Chicago. The Harwood Junior High Percussion Ensemble will be performing at the Midwest Clinic in Chicago, and this is a tremendous honor to be selected to perform at this prestigious event. This will be the 75th Annual Midwest Clinic. It will be one of the largest events that they have had thus far, and there will be 50 performances by ensembles from around the world. So you have to audition and be selected to perform. So this is quite an honor for the Harwood Junior High Percussion Ensemble. So we're excited about their performance and certainly want to congratulate them and wish them the best of luck. And then finally, I want to recognize our HEB Chambers Leadership HEB Class of 2022. Each year, the leadership class gets to select a project, and this year the project that they selected was to collect coats for students here in HEBISD, and thus far they have collected 150 brand new coats for the students here in HEBISD. So I want to say thank you very much to the members of the Chambers Leadership Class of 2022. That's tremendous, and just again an example of the support that we receive from this community in helping to support our students. So thank you very much. And then finally, I want to just quickly recognize all of our elementary and our secondary visual and performing arts groups who've been busy this month celebrating the holiday season with a number of fantastic performances. I hope some of you have had the opportunity to catch some of those. It's really, truly been a month to showcase the talents and the skills of these fantastic students and their directors. So this is always a fun month for VPA. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other clarifications needed?
The only clarification is you have the information, COVID-19 report that's a part of your packet each board meeting.
All right, so at this time we'll review the board activity chart. I'll start with Mr. Cargile. Okay. Mr. Brown. Mr. Campos.
I just want to say Christmas is a great season, time to see and do everything. And we get to see all of the kids perform such great things, and I just think the Harmony Choir was just awesome. Seeing them both for the seniors as well as at the chamber, it's just amazing. I wish I could sing as well as they do. There's a ton of other things that this is just a great season where we spend a ton of time doing things, but it was awesome. So, just want to say that.
We wish you could sing that well too, Fred. Just kidding. I want to thank Miss Stanton for inviting me to be a judge for the chili cook-off at Euless Junior High. That's always fun. And I went to the Central Junior High Suzuki and orchestra performances. Those kids are so amazing. It was the fine tuners and the orchestra, and they were just amazing. I went to the Wilshire Elementary 6-week celebration, and that was fun. It was outside. There's, how many hundreds kids just screaming. Lots of awards given out. They're doing some great things academically, and that was a lot of fun. So I thank Wilshire for having me. And we went to the Trinity Volleyball Banquet last week. That the girls were amazing, and it was led by them, and the decorations were amazing. So thanks for that invitation. I did make it to a couple of the Night of Hope celebrations, which is always a favorite. And then this morning, I went to Donna Park, and I want to thank Ms. Hernandez for inviting me to read to her first grade class at Donna Park. It was amazing. So, lots of fun.
I want to add one more thing since Mr. Cargile always passes. Me and Andy were invited to the Bel Air Spelling Bee, and I just want to say Mr. Cargile showed up with his little bee hat on, and we were both out by round 7. The kids are amazing, the spellers. So
You were judges though, right?
we were judges, yes. Yeah.
They went 13 rounds. We went out in 7.
Yeah, we were out in 7. So
Nice. I don't really have much to add. Some of the things that the others have already mentioned, and Mr. Chapman mentioned the senior breakfast, where we also got to see the Suzuki Strings group. One thing I haven't mentioned in a while is the Education Foundation Board. Several of us are on that board, and they're doing really great things. We're gearing up for starting to have teachers apply for grants. So hopefully some of those monies will go into your school. The board has been very busy raising funds this year. And the other thing I don't often mention, but it is this week, and it's one of the funnest things I get to do, which is I am a mentor for Trojan Talk. And that is at Trinity it's called Trojan Talk, at Bell's it's called Teams, but it is a mentoring program for folks from the community that come in and take a class. And the funnest part about it is your kids, if you stay with your group, they'll stay with you for the whole entire time they're at the high school. And so my seniors, we never saw each other last year. And we only saw each other for half the year, their sophomore year. So it's been really fun to kind of hone in and get to know those kids a little bit better in the short time that we've been together.
I'll pass. You pass. All right, I just had a couple things. We just last week had our 3rd class for the Ambassador Academy, the Board Ambassador Academy. So I just wanted to thank Dr. Harrington and Dr. Norgard and Kara Elledge. They put together a fantastic presentation about our educational operations, and we got some great compliments and great reviews on that whole presentation. They did a really fantastic job. And I also, I'd always, every Christmas or holiday season, I try to attend as many fine arts things as I possibly can. This year's been a little bit different because of some things that some of you know about. But I did get to go to the Bell Orchestra performance, and that was world class as always. So I really enjoyed that. All right, next we're going to talk to our student ambassadors. This evening you'll see the 2 students back in their green jackets. Those are our student ambassadors. Tonight we have Ratika Benapali from Trinity High School and Isaac Ramos from Trinity High School, also a senior. You guys will come up, and we'd love to talk to you for a second. All right, and tonight's question is going to be asked by Mr. Campos.
good evening, guys. One of the things I love about you guys is we get an opportunity to hear back from students. So feel free to be honest with us. I'm real interested in some feedback today. The first question I want to ask you guys is, as student ambassadors, you get to observe our district. What is the biggest surprise that you've learned that maybe you didn't know before you were student ambassadors?
About the district, or I think the most surprising thing that I found out about the district as becoming a student ambassador would be about the resources that the Buenger Center has provided, especially because of how it has progressed over the years, and how learning about the resources that it also provides the elementary school children, because growing up I only thought that it was available for high schoolers, but now I'm learning about the cybersecurity program and all these tech classes that the elementary school children can also attend and learn about. So that was very surprising to me.
Gotcha. I've got one more question for you, then I'll switch and give you guys a chance to answer the second one. So if I could wave a magic wand and I could give you Steve's job where you get to be superintendent of the whole schools, but not only that, you get to change one thing about HEBISD, what would you change?
If I became the superintendent and I could change anything about my high school career, it would definitely be to improve the resources and guidance that it provides the students of HEB in regard to their life after high school, such as their careers or futures, because that is an aspect that many children or students struggle with. Because going into high school, I really struggled with trying to figure out what I wanted to do after high school, and it took me a while to finally decide, okay, this is what I want to do. And of course, the Buenger is an amazing resource for students, but not many people have time inside their academic schedule. And the first idea that came up into mind is how I have a coworker that actually is a senior at Keller ISD, and he told me about their internship program that their school provides to their students, about how they provide internship opportunities and provides them exposure to the fields that they want to pursue in the future. And he had told me that how he had undergone talking to adults and had gone under a application process and interview, and I just thought that was really interesting. And incorporating these kinds of resources for the students of HEB to help them with their future would really provide a positive impact within their future. So I think that would be really interesting to see.
Ritika, thank you so much for representing us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, same question. Start with question number one, which was, do you remember it or shall I repeat it, actually?
Yes, can you repeat it, please?
No problem. As a student ambassador observing our district, what was the biggest surprise to you?
So I would like to piggyback off of what my fellow ambassador said. The Career and Technical Institute, we first learned about it, I think, in 7th grade. But I didn't realize how many different opportunities and job careers that we could possibly go into and how we're prepared for that. And so, yeah, that was a big thing that I learned about.
Gotcha. Now, Isaac, same thing. Boom, I wave a magic wand, you are superintendent from the day, and you have the power to change one thing about your high school career. What would you change?
So if I were superintendent, I would like to give or provide more student workshops for seniors and like high school students. As a senior applying for college right now, it's pretty stressful, especially kind of doing everything on your own. I feel like we are sort of guided on how to apply, but it's a very complex process. And to do all of that along with like our schoolwork, it's pretty stressful. So I think student workshops, guiding them on how to write essays or where I should apply, how to do FAFSA, I think that would be really helpful and relieve a lot of stress.
Thank you, Isaac, so much. Appreciate that you representing us.
All right, thank you. All right, next we are going to be doing the HEB ISD 2021 holiday card design. Our conditions for
Thank
student
you.
artwork.
Thank you, Board. We are happy tonight to recognize some very talented artists, and I'm going to turn the podium over to Mark Chandler, our Director of Visual Performing Arts, and he is going to read out the names. But Mr. Chapman, I'm going to ask that you come down and pose in some pictures for us.
Absolutely. Well, good evening, Mr. Chapman and Board. This is one of the most fun things we ever get to do all year long. And you guys are aware, we do this a year ahead of time. So the art that we're seeing now was submitted a year ago, back in pandemic days when we weren't all meeting in classes and things like that. But you'll notice out here coming in the lobby, there are 30 pieces of students who were identified as honorable mention student artists. And so we're glad to have those. And tonight we're going to recognize 4 of the finalists, and then our winner of this year's art card. So thank you for your support of this. I know that many of you have had the opportunity to come by and judge this event, so it's a lot of fun. So if we can, let's start with our finalists. And the first one we're going to bring up is Savannah Shaw from Bedford Heights. Is Savannah here? Art teacher, if you're here. Melissa, come on up. And your principal.
All right.
Yes. There we go. Savannah was a 5th grader when she submitted her piece. And so I can't wait to see what you do forward from here. Congratulations, Savannah. Next we have Elil Hernandez, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from Stonegate. Shannon Voss, art teacher. Principal, come on up. Would you say your name properly for me, sir? Okay, I was close. Elil. Very good. Congratulations. Come back over there and have a picture made. Elil was also a 5th grader when his piece was submitted. And next we have Karma Kamel from Bell Manor Elementary. You were at Bell Manor as a 6th grader when you submitted your piece, right? Danielle T. Garden, come on up. Principal, come on up. And in case you're wondering where these art pieces are, they're getting their original art pieces back. But if you see the holiday card, look on the back. Our 4 finalists are presented on the back.
Right.
Yes. And they are receiving their original art piece back. Thank you. Our next finalist is Ian Thompson, again from Bedford Heights. Melissa Campbell, come on up. Principal, come on up. Ian was a 4th grader when his piece was presented. There you go. Congratulations. That's all right. It's okay. Well, and our winner, I don't know that our winner is able to be with us tonight. Our winner, Karen Samarith, was at Hurst-Hills as a 6th grader when she presented this piece. And Ms. Ahouse, her art teacher, is here. And Principal, Karen, is your principal here too? At least y'all come up and get your student's art piece and the certificate for them being selected as the HEB Holiday Art Card Artist for this school year. Yep. Very good. Well, thank you all very much for continuing to support what we do. As Mr. Chapman has said, we're off to Chicago starting tomorrow. That's exciting. Harwood's already headed up that way. So a lot of great things happening, and they happen because of your support, and we appreciate that very much. All of our art card recipients, if you'll meet me out there, I've got some samples to give you of your art, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Give everyone a chance to head out.
like I want to bring her up on my lap. I cannot.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Chapman, do we need a closed session? Okay, we do not need a closed session, so we will continue, oh, wait. Open forum was number one first anyway, so. All right, so we're ready for open forum number one. Our first speaker is Tony Pompa. Is Mr. Pompa in the room? Okay. All right, our second speaker is J.R. Martinez.
Good evening, Board. I'm J.R. Martinez, and I am a current Tarrant Appraisal District Board member. And to get started, if you need a chaperone for Chicago, please let me know. I will make myself available. All right. So, love the city. I'm here today to request your votes for the Tarrant Appraisal District Board. But before I get into that, I really want to give you an update about what the Appraisal District has done this year. I think it's important to know the accomplishments that have been made as a board. But first of all, just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I'm a past Fort Worth ISD board member from 2012-2013, and also past president of the Greater Fort Worth Association of Realtors. So as a board this past year at TAD, one of the things that we've done that TAD did was certify the 2021 appraisal roll early on July 22nd. TAD has certified the roll on time for over the past 13 years. In addition to that, in 2021, TAD processed over 150,000 taxpayer and agent protests. One of the biggest highlights is that TAD continues to improve the online protest process and value negotiation tools, which help facilitate resolutions in value disputes. In addition to that, the Tarrant Appraisal District was recognized as one of the best places to work for in Fort Worth by Fort Worth Magazine, Inc. magazine. TAD was ranked 27 out of 40. In addition to that, in May of 2021, TAD received the Government Finance Officers Associations of the United States and Canada Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This award was TAD's 32nd consecutive year receiving this honor. A lot of times you hear about the negatives of an organization. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. You never hear the positives, which is why I think it's important to hear what the positives are. So as I said, I am running for the TAD board again. I served a one-year appointment or one-year election and looking to do 2 years. I'm requesting the board for this evening to split your votes between myself, Mr. Tony Pompa, and Ms. Catherine Willimon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I think I saw Mr. Pompa walk in, so you're up next, sir. And you'll have 3 minutes. The time will be up on the screen. That's great.
Thank you. Good to see everyone. I think some of you guys were on the board, and I remember you, Matt, from some time back. I served on the Arlington ISD board from 2011 to 2014. And so I kind of have a little bit of experience in what you guys get to do all the time. It was great to see the kids here with Christmas cards. I always enjoyed when we had the students come and perform, the choir, the bands, and all that. And that was always my favorite part of being on the board. You know, this is my first year. I was finishing up Mike O'Donnell's term. He was appointed in 2019, could not finish, and so I came in with about 10 months left in the year. Mainly just learning what the board does and what the organization, the district, the appraisal district does. And so it was a good year. There was a few things that we did try to focus on. Mainly one of the things is our meetings were going 6 hours long. And as you guys can imagine, that's a little bit long. We can take care of the business that we have to take care of in a little bit shorter time. This year coming up, our main focus, if we are reelected, Catherine Wallman has been a great chair, and I think we have a good focus for this year, primarily making sure that we are keeping you all informed, doing a better job of that, because we haven't done a great job at that. Reaching out to our elected officials at the state level as well. Make sure that we get on the same page. You know, we're funded in different ways. School districts are funded by property taxes, and the state is by sales taxes, so a little bit of different pressures. And so we have to have a better line of communication. Safety or security of our system is critical, and I think we're going to do a deeper dive on our systems to make sure that we don't suffer some of the issues that other school districts have suffered with their data. As you can imagine, if our data was compromised, it would create a lot of havoc for all of us in collecting taxes and making sure that y'all have the money that you need to run this school district. And then we'd like to do a strategic plan. It's something that I kind of spearheaded when I joined the school board in Arlington in 2011. I remember actually studying you guys because you guys have always been recognized as running a very good school district. Back then and now, I knew that, we were, I'm not going to say we're recruiting, but we're kind of recruiting some of your people away because y'all did a good job in running the school district. And then eventually when some of our school district employees began to get some notice and some attention, we recognized, okay, I think we're going in the right direction, that we have good people. And so we hope to do that for Tarrant Appraisal District. It's a lot smaller than you guys are. Our budget's $17-18 million. So a little bit smaller than most of the school districts, but I think that'll be our focus. Would like to agree with JR as far as splitting our votes between the three of us. I appreciate it. Thank you all.
We do not need a closed session, so we will move down to the consent items. Are there any items that any board member would like to have removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I will accept a motion.
I move the board approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. And that motion passes. We will now pass out certificates of appreciation for donations that were made. And I will turn it over to Ms. Cole.
And I think for one more time, maybe, I'm going to stay in this seat instead of going over to the other microphone. So first up, Board Member Rochelle Ross has a certificate to present to Muriel Carrillo of Bedford Junior High, Michael Martinek, and Sarah Hanick, sorry. This is $500 donation that will go towards gym repair costs at Bedford Junior High gymnastics. And Mr. Romero has a certificate to Peg and Michael Standich. This is for STEM. Kira Elledge, Dr. Joe Harrington is here to accept this donation of $2,500. Oh, yes. And it was pointed out to me that this is for Lego materials for Kira, probably for her think tank. Thank you to this community once again for being very generous with your financial donations.
All right, thank you, Ms. Cole. We are into reports and presentations. First is report on resignations and retirements. Were there any questions on this report? All right, disbursements for the month of November 2021. Any questions on this? All right, district benchmark assessment. Dr. Norgard.
Good evening. Our last report of the year 2021. All right. I am here presenting math data this evening, so I also wanted to thank our elementary and secondary math coordinators, Ms. Adcox and Ms. Manning, are here as well to hear any comments you might have or be sure that any concerns or questions that we're taking those forward in our curriculum. So we do have interim data related to some of our strategic plan quality indicators. In particular, our goals focused on meets grade level and master's grade level on STAR. I do want to take just a moment before jumping into the data to give you some context. Elementary math DBA 1 is, in the grand scheme of things, a fairly new test. We added this in 5 or 6 years ago. At principal's request, we always meet with our assessment advisory committee as we're planning the assessment calendar for the upcoming year. And this was a request from principals, instead of waiting until the spring to do that full DBA, to let's kind of do a warm-up. Longer than a CBA, not as long as a full DBA, but that does mean the data pattern looks different here. And you'll see that when we get to the bars and the charts, that with things like reading, where the skills just grow, with math, because there's different amounts of content that's been presented up to this amount of time, you'll see a different pattern in that data. And for last year, we are only including the students that were testing with us in person at that time. We do have students testing in both English and Spanish, which means something at the campuses as they're looking at those students and what's their best language. But really, I've put this box around our combined results because those are the numbers we carry forward in our analysis. And there you see those numbers again in the box here at the bottom of the screen. So these are our approaches, meets, and masters performance, and we see some nice green arrows because this group of third graders is performing more strongly than last year's third graders at this time. If you look at the date given, we've always given this DBA 1 in November. It appears to be a little bit earlier that year. Well, we had an earlier start this year. Last year, the first 6 weeks had 7 weeks in it instead of 6. So there has been some variation and a little bit of adjustment in the scope and sequence as we've looked at where do students need a little bit more time, but it's at roughly the same position, just a little bit different in where it fell in the calendar compared to the school calendar. So these are our minimum end-of-year targets based on last year's third grade performance. So you can see actually we are already, this group of third graders, exceeding those in some areas. That's why they're a minimum expectation, because we're going to keep that in mind and then move beyond that. So here is where you can see in particular, if you look over at 18-19 and the blue and the green, the meets and the masters, historically we see a little dip and then a rebound as we hit DBA 2, because that DBA 2 is suddenly going to be a longer test, more content, but then they get that and they are ready, the teachers intervene and they bounce back up at STAR. So it's a little different pattern than when we look at reading. So if when we come back at DBA 2, these bars have gone down a little bit, know that that's something we see a lot and is not unexpected for us, but we keep in mind these are our minimum targets for where we want to be at the end of this year. But we've got a bar to place in between when we take our DBA 2. Because this is the first STAR testing year for third graders, I don't have that look back at how this group has done. All of that data were different groups of third graders over the years, so we don't have cohort performance history for this group of students. But as we jump into fourth grade, again, we're going to look at the combined results, so those in the box. And again, we see green arrows. I'm very happy tonight. That's why the whole report is green. Green arrows and a green color scheme for the night. The same thing applies to the dates. And yes, we are happy to see these coming back because last year we had significant drops, as we know, when we have discussed quite a bit last year. So we will focus on where we are rebounding this year. And when you look at those minimum end-of-year targets, again, based on last year's fourth graders' performance, you can see that this year's fourth graders are already meeting and exceeding that and continuing to push forward for the rest of this year. Historically, again, here's where you definitely can see that dip and rebound effect. So you can see, well, we are already exceeding these minimum targets. We may have a dip when we get our next data, but when we look for that rebound that we typically see in our pattern. So I do have cohort performance for this group because this group of students, they were with us as third graders. So I can see how they performed and really rather consistently across their third grade year. Not a lot of change across their third grade year, but then we have crossed this green bar into their fourth grade year, and while we are not seeing the movement at approaches yet, we see big improvements at meets and masters. That's important because while we've talked a lot about this group of students that in those gaps, they're not getting where they need to be, we can't just focus there. We've got to grow all of our students. So our meets and masters is growing, which means we also need to put some attention here on how are those students that they're holding steady, but we need to see that number go up. And the stars would be our targets. So move on to fifth grade. Fifth grade data may look a little different because remember in the past this has been our SSI grade where they would have an earlier star administration and then a second one. We'll take these combined results forward in our data, double-digit gains at approaches, meets, and masters. For DBA1, we're dealing with approximately the same time period. When we get to DBA2, that's where the time period may shift because of SSI and where the test has moved for students from year to year with different groups of fifth graders. And these are the minimum end-of-year targets based on last year's fifth graders. So again, right there at those goals. So with this group, students that were in fifth grade in the year we went into shutdown, because of that different timeline, they actually had a DBA2. We haven't had that for other groups of students in 1920 because, again, the fifth grade test was on a different timeline, but similar patterns there. So for this group of students, they came in as third graders. We got a starting data point with them at DBA1, and then we did not test them on a district assessment again until fourth grade. So we can see this dotted line, we can see exactly what happened during our shutdown. But we can also see moving from there how they are growing, moving forward and crossing into this fifth grade year. And still just a little bit of growth to hit that minimum target at approaches and masters, but already exceeding for meets. Sixth grade, all of our students test in English, so these are the numbers we'll bring forward in our chart. Double digits at meets and masters. They did have large drops last year, as with all of our other groups, we know. And exceeding and far exceeding in some areas the end-of-year minimum target set based on last year's sixth graders' performance. Now remember, this is a group that we just saw large double-digit drops when they were fifth graders in that data. So that'll also show up when we look at their cohort performance history. Across the years, our different groups of sixth graders, we see very much this familiar pattern of down and back up. For their cohort history, fairly consistent across their third grade year. And then again, we can see all of this time that we were in the closure or not having our regular instruction and assessment with these students, the decline that happened as they came into their fifth grade year. But they did climb through their fifth grade year. It was just, as we saw in the previous slide when we talked about fifth grade, not nearly the kind of growth we usually see from fifth graders. So that's great to see the sharp increases as we move into sixth grade, the beginning of the sixth grade year content. So we will probably see when we hit DBA2, sixth grade, while we have it elementary, is middle school for so many, and there are some really tough concepts that come in for our students with math here in sixth grade. So it's not uncommon to see a dip, and then we'll have that time to grow back forward. So what are we doing in response to this data? Because it's great. We're seeing the green arrows. How do we get more green arrows? Keep it moving forward. So really, in a lot of ways, we continue doing these things that we've put in place this year. They're working. Let's keep them working. So looking at the small group and workshop times, activities aligned to STAR STEMs, not just, the content, but the way in which the content is presented to students for our lowest performing TEKs, not just on this year's test, but this is why we have this history of data. We can see that historically for several years, fifth grade struggles with this concept. So how do we continue to spiral that in and provide those small group and workshop times for them? This next step, we've talked a lot about the fact that students are back in and can put their hands on the materials, but it's not just when they go off to those workshops or small group times. When that first teach is happening, it's not students sitting there watching the teacher manipulate things. The students are following and modeling along. And then finally, this is happening at all the levels, is embedding representations, whether it's pictures, whether it's expressions, whether it's models, and writing. Because if you've looked at a math star lately, the answers aren't just numbers. You know, there's sentences, it's explanations. The questions don't just ask them, what was the number? It's, how did you get this number? Or what would have made sense? Or why isn't this a good choice? So this opportunity, you see all of these students writing as well as doing, you know, that old reading and writing and arithmetic. We've got to include the writing along with the mathematics because that is where they get to explain their thinking. So do you have questions about our elementary math and where we are right now in the year?
Any questions on this report?
I just think this feels really good to really see it improving. I know our teachers are working so hard, and our students are obviously working really hard too. And this is showing that if we keep at it, this is what we can get.
So we'll continue, you know, our coordinators are busy taking all that feedback and giving them, you know, here's what was working, here's what wasn't, and how do we get more of that into the curriculum for them. So we're very encouraged.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you. That report was good news, so it's always good to see that when we know that everybody is working so hard and that we have so many challenges to overcome, so. Let's see next. Ms. Tuttle. So I'm trying to
Just a
find
brief update on Goal 3 from our scorecard. Again, this is dealing with attendance, and we're looking for campus and departments to have 97% or higher average annual attendance. And when I reported to you at the first 6 weeks, we were right at that 97% mark. We are at 96.45%. And so we are now yellow, but we're very, very close to that 97, and we feel very good about that, that percentage. Are there any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you. We are now down into action items. We will start with 11.02, financial statements. Mr. Williams.
Yes. Good evening, Board of Trustees. Okay, we're presenting to you tonight the September and October financial statements. However, we will just be reviewing the October statements as those actually contain the September things that happened in September. So we are going to try something a little bit different tonight. So, so I've put the highlights of the financial statements, and yes, there are financial highlights sometimes, on a PowerPoint. You can follow along with that up here with me, or if you want to follow along with the detailed financials, you'll need to go to the board docs and pull that document up, the October financials, and pull that document up, and you can follow along with me that way, and I will reference the page numbers I'm on, and we'll see how this works. And then you can give me plus deltas at the end and see, see how it goes. Are you going to drive this, or you want me to? Go ahead. Okay, we're going to start with the general fund. As you can see, we have a ending fund balance for the month of October, $128,400,397. This equates to a expenses over revenues of $14,468,944. We will, if you want to reference this part is on page 2 of the details financials, and then pages 3 through 6 of the October financials will detail the revenue and expenses. This is normal for this time of year for our expenses to be that far ahead of our revenues because our revenues come from tax collections. That will start ramping up in this month, December, and continue in January and February will be our really big months. So that's perfectly normal. As you can see, that's October is 2/12 of our budget year, or 17% of our budget. So if you're following along in the detail, you can see that most of that follows along closely, but there are, this time of year, you will see like our, well, when we get to the next slide, I'll show you that, but let's go to that. The expenditure metrics, or the Wrestler report. That's page 7 of the detailed financials. If you're looking at that, that is payroll is 80%. That's typically runs about 87 to 88% because it is the first of the year, and we're executing a lot of new contracts. We're buying a lot of supplies, starting up the year. That number it skews a little bit because those expenses are higher than normal throughout the rest of the year. So payroll again is running about 80% for October. Utilities, which is our other big expenditure, is running about 2% as normal, and instructional supplies, again, 2%, which is normal throughout the year. Food service fund. And if you have any questions about anything, just stop me as we're going through here. Food service fund. Fund balance is $6,230,284. This represents expenses greater than revenues, $152,061. This is referenced on page 8 and 9 of the detailed financials. Again, it's 2/12 or 17% of our budget year. Again, in food service, it's kind of like our general revenue. We apply for federal reimbursements for all our meals, but we won't start getting those and booking those until a little bit later. So that'll lag behind for just a little bit. But we are doing very well in food service. Mariella continues to do a fantastic job, especially considering she's still down 32 employees this morning, and then she has them calling in sick, but somehow they managed to get it done. So I can't give her enough kudos for the job her and her team's doing. Not to mention they're going through a TDA audit right now, which is pretty brutal, and she will be ready for the Christmas break more than anybody. So moving to the debt service fund. That fund balance is $13,570,917. This one is actually $590,240 revenues more than expenditures. But again, we have two big payouts in the debt service fund. One in February 15th of $7,687,283, and then another one in August 15th, $29,097,282. Which makes our total debt service for the year $36,784,564. And again, as tax collections come in, these revenues will start ramping up as well. And the next one. Pre-K CK program, doing much better than last year with all the kids back in school. I think they're pretty full, doing really well. That fund balance is $187,281. Revenues over expenditures of $167,265. Again, if you're following along on the detail, that's pages 13 and 14. That's really all about, there's not much, pretty quiet as far as the rest of the detail. Special revenue funds. We don't show a fund balance number on these per se because there's multiple funds consisting of federal, state, and local grant programs. If you're following along, reference page 16 and 17 of the October financials for the detail. Again, you can look at each line item and compare that to the 17% of budget for this time of year. And some of them will be higher, some of them lower, but as the year goes along, we'll start seeing those even out and line out. The revenues currently are greater than budgeted, as the state and federal program revenues are not actually yet budgeted, because we don't do that until after the audit is when they'll actually figure out all those details and budget that revenue. So. Campus activity funds, again, with all the kids back in school, or most of them, that is doing much better too. The fund balance is $3,184,646. Revenues over expenditures of $232,126. And as I said, those the fundraising activities have ramped up, as I'm sure each of y'all all know. Yes, they do. Anyway, they're doing quite well. I think things are getting back to where they were and should be, which is good news for everybody. 2018 bond fund. That fund balance is $32,097,685. Again, we're back to expenses over revenues of $1,000,000 $176,831. This will be on pages 21 to 22 of the October financials. As you know, there's really no new revenue in this fund other than maybe a little bit of interest earned every month that gets put in there, but until we issue new bonds at some point in the future. We are still finishing up the Bedford Junior High and Harwood Junior High projects, just a little bit, not much left on those. And the majority of the current expenditures are going to the support staff building at West Hurst, which is, Mr. Chapman and I toured that today. Looks really, really nice. Yes, awesome. And they're right on track to get moved in, most of them over the break. So, the locally defined capital projects fund, that fund is sitting at a fund balance of $48,407,439. Again, expenses are greater than revenues of $23,846. This fund is relatively quiet right now. Again, pages 23, 24 of the financials if you're following along. Revenues for this fund, again, the only revenues this fund receives is if the board decides to transfer excess fund balance into that fund at some point, which we will be bringing to you at some point down the road. And then the only things we really have coming out of that right now are just a little bit of stuff finishing up Oakwood Terrace. And then, of course, we will be starting and some of these new projects we talked about at the November 2021 facilities meeting. So we'll be starting some of those projects and spending some funds out of this fund. And I think that's it, unless we have some questions.
All right, are there any questions on October financials?
Okay.
All right, this is an action item, so I will take a motion to approve them.
I move that the board approve the financial statements for September and October of 2021.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The board approve the financial statements for September and October 2021. Please vote. All right, that item is approved. Now, budget transfer and amendments.
Again, October is a very, very quiet month for transfers and amendments. We do have one transfer of $8,000 for to purchase library books, and another transfer request of $30,000 into instructional leadership for the purchase of general supplies and miscellaneous.
All right, does the board have any questions on those transfers? I will accept a motion on this item.
I move the board approve the budget transfer and amendment requests for December 2021.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves the budget transfer and amendment request for December 2021. Please vote. That motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Williams. All right, we're at item 11.04, approval of the 2022-2023 official school calendar. Ms. Hollander.
Yes, as we shared last month, I shared that I would bring you some additional information. So I'm going to do a quick review of the process that we followed, and then I'll share the new information. We met with the entire committee, the DLIC, on November 4th. We shared the data from other districts and colleges on some of the dates that they had chosen for spring break and some of those dates. We then decided to send a Google form to teachers, elementary teachers and principals concerning Parent-Teacher Day, Parent-Teacher Conference Day. That's something we just wanted to receive more data on. We then had the board meeting on November the 15th, and we shared the three options with you guys, and the decision was made to go ahead and receive stakeholder input on those three options. We did receive input back from the staff and parents and community, and from the staff, it was a 59.4% in favor of option 2, and the parent input was a 58.2% for option 2. So to do a quick review of and that was open from November the 11th through the 19th. And I believe you guys received that in your Friday update a couple of weeks ago. Option 2 allows school to begin on August 10th. The last day of school is May the 25th, which is prior to Memorial Day and allows for graduation. There's a full week at Thanksgiving, 2.5 weeks for the winter break. That goes from December 19th through January 4th, and the kids come back on the 5th. February 4th in February, there is a 4-day weekend. If you look at that, there is a 4-day weekend for our students. Then in March, there's a spring break, and then April, there is another 4-day weekend. So it allows 2 springish breaks, if I need to scroll up. Okay, there we go. And there's the other break there. And again, the last day of school would be the 25th of May. So, and also, the reason, the difference between option 1 and option 2 is that the day after Halloween, which is November 1st, is a preferred day for students to be off. And the difference would be the 1st and the 8th. And as you see here on November, the day off is November 1st. So we recommend, as an administration, option 2 with your approval.
All right. Are there any questions on this option?
Why am I blanking? Oh, is Election Day November 1st?
It is November 8th.
November 8th, okay.
That's the difference. Right. In the past, we have had election.
Deanna, I like this option, but just curious, have you or staff or Steve got any feedback about having the end of the 6 weeks occur before Christmas as opposed to after?
It was overwhelmingly positive, especially from the junior highs. I have a principal at the back smiling, so yes.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to hear it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're right, this calendar does allow for that semester to end.
Yeah, and I've heard that this will affect 4 of our schools probably for Election Day.
It is. Right now, 4. We don't know that for sure, but right now we count on about 4 that would have that, and we're looking into safety options.
All right, any further questions? We'll accept a motion on this calendar.
I move that the board approve the 2022-2023 school calendar as presented.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves the 2022-2023 school calendar as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. So we have a calendar. All right, the next item is a board resolution authorizing one-time employee retention payment. Ms. Tuttle?
So I know you've had the opportunity to review this, but the desire of the district is to recognize the continued efforts of our staff for their hard work, their countless hours of work, and specifically to recognize the retention of employees. And so we're asking tonight that you consider for approval the opportunity for those who are currently in full-time, professional, and classified positions and will remain in those positions through January the 10th to receive a $1,000 one-time payment in their January 20th paycheck. And when I say classified, to clarify, that includes our paraprofessionals, our clerical staff, our auxiliary and our technical employees, as well as our professional employees. And then for those who are in TRS eligible positions that are 50% or more, there would be a $500 one-time payment. And this is for eligible employees who are in TRS eligible positions, so not including our part-time staff. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions on this resolution? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board adopt the resolution as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The board adopts the resolution as presented. Please vote. And that motion passes. And that information will go out tomorrow?
Yes, we have a video that's ready and it will go out tomorrow.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, next is update to the 2021-2022 staffing table.
So we, with your authorization, we set aside at the beginning of the year several units that could be utilized for enrollment purposes or needs, and we are wanting to take one of those and use it for a 50% special education teacher in the early childhood program, early childhood special ed program over at Arbor Creek that is bursting at the seams, and the other half of that unit be reorganized into a teacher assistant, 50% for the same purpose.
All right, are there any questions on this change to the staffing table? I will accept a motion.
I move the board approve the update to the 2021-2022 staffing table reorganized unit.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The board approved the reorganized units in the 2020-2021 staffing table as submitted. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, are there any questions on item 11.07, approval of employment recommendations? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the employments as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The board approve the employments as submitted. Please vote. And that motion passes. Let's see, supplemental staffing for custodial operations. Let's see, there wasn't any presentation about this, was there? Were there any questions? I know the board received quite a bit of information concerning this. So if there are no questions, I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the service agreement offered by ABM with a not to exceed amount of $950,000.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The board approves the service agreement offered by ABM with a not to exceed amount of $950,000. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, athletic storage building at Harwood Junior High. Once again, we did receive a lot of information on this over this past week, so does anyone have any questions? I'd just like to hear Josh talk. I mean, I haven't seen him in so long.
Mike's here too.
Hey, there's Mike.
Hurst-Euless has a building for equipment. Is that like the one at Hurst-Euless? Yes. Yes, and so during the construction, they had to remove the smallest one out of all the junior highs. So they removed that, put the portable
What are the dimensions to that? Okay.
All right, are there any more questions? I will accept a motion.
I move the board approve the quote from Goldsmith Construction Company, Inc.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the quote from Goldsmith Construction Company, Inc. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, audiovisual project at Pat May Center. Does the board have any questions on that item?
This is great.
Hearing none, I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approves a quote from Superior Fiber and Data Services.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the quote from Superior Fiber and Data Services Incorporated. Please vote.
How many times have we done this? Steve, do you remember? How many times we've done the audio, Pat May? Seems like we've done it several times.
Yeah, I know this is at least the second time that we have done the audio, since it was brand new. So, third time it'll have an audio system.
Craig? He says he voted.
And that motion passes. All right, we are down to item 11.11.
Whoa.
Need a second?
Sorry, something just popped up on.
Okay. All right, we're looking at approval of RFP number 21-11, instructional materials, supplies, and services. Are there any questions on this item? I will accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the listing of vendors for instructional materials, supplies, and services.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approve the listing of vendors for instructional materials, supplies, and services. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, next we're going to look at approval of 8 core network switch replacements. Are there any questions on this item? I will accept a motion.
I move the board approve the quote from NetSync Network Solutions.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves the quote from NetSync Network Solutions. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, next we are looking at approval of Microsoft EES Direct Renewal. Any questions from the board? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the quote from Dell Technologies.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves the quote from Dell Technologies. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, Item 11.14, approval of RFP 19-15D, catering and snack services.
Snacks are always good.
Any questions on this RFP? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the listing of all responding vendors.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves the listing of all responding vendors. Please vote. That motion passes. Next is approval of RFP 12-12, Spiritware Awards, Trophies, and Promotional Items. Any questions on this RFP? I'll accept a motion. Come on, don't give
I
up.
move that the board approves the list of vendors for Spiritware awards, trophies, and promotional items.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves the listing of vendors for Spiritware awards, trophies, and promotional items. Please vote.
No, but it's okay. It's okay.
And that motion passes. All right, our final item on this list is approval of turf replacement at LD Bell and Trinity High School's campus game fields. This is another item that we received quite a bit of information in the past week or two. So are there any questions? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion.
I move the board approve the quote from Paragon Sports.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves the quote from Paragon Sports. Please vote. And that motion passes. We're ready for open forum number 2. Mr. Fielder?
Thank you very much. Also, Mr. Brown, the dimensions are 25 by 40.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right, we're going to start open forum number 2. Our first speaker is Mary Lowe. You'll have 3 minutes, and it'll be up on the screen for you.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak to you tonight. 2 weeks ago today, I had a meeting with a parent and Mr. Chapman and Mr. Harrington, at which time issue of parents' availability of the children's curriculum was at question. And I feel like the parent was patronized, and to date, she still does not have access to her child's curriculum. We asked the Attorney General for his opinion regarding 26.007, and his response is 26.006C requires the district to allow a student to take a textbook home for inspection, specifically stating subject to the availability of the instructional material. The district or school shall honor the request. In support, the Attorney General has issued an opinion concerning inspection of curriculum and opined that a parent should be able to take a textbook or instructional material home. In this case, it means an iPad. When you go 1-to-1 per student, the iPad needs to be made to go home. It is a personal request that this board make available to all parents the iPads overnight. I understood from a conversation with Pat Hardy that HEB has cited that they don't have to send it home because you have a copyright of the curriculum. And I have a really hard time with that. The parents of this district cannot have something withheld from their viewing because the district owns a copyright on it. They are a stakeholder in this. If it's your copyright, it's their copyright. I'm asking you at this point in time to comply. It's been 2 weeks. We've gone to the Attorney General. The next thing is the Texas Education Agency, and we will ask them to intervene on the parents' behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charlotte Brashears.
Good evening. I'm here tonight. Oh, my name is Charlotte Brashears, and I'm a HEB resident. I'm here tonight as a concerned citizen of this district. I'm not here to place blame on any particular person or entity. I'm here to hopefully open the eyes of those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. The things that are going on in our world today didn't just appear just like that. They've slowly crept in over many, many years. We've allowed things in that weren't supposed to be allowed in. School districts all across the United States are finding themselves in court over what is being taught to our children. Everything that is in the dark will be exposed. There is no hiding it. You can call it whatever you want to call it. CRT, SEL, DEI, Castle, panorama. But the truth of the matter is it's pure evil. Indoctrination at its finest. Our government is illegally overstepping. They are ignoring the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. They are using our hard-earned money to indoctrinate our children with sexually explicit material, both mentally and physically, without our consent. Our schools have become government schools instead of public. And it's sad that I'm having to be up here saying this because I know what's going on around our whole country. And I think it's time that we have to say no and choose the material that's better fit for our children, like reading and writing and arithmetic, instead of teaching them how to have sex or do whatever, threesomes, reading books in our libraries. You need to check your libraries because that's where it's at, and in the curriculum. So stop this nonsense. You can all put a stop to this today. All you have to do is get this garbage out of our schools. We've all been lied to. It's time to wake up. Is this really what we want our future to be? Another Sodom and Gomorrah? We take God out of our schools in the early 60s and allowed Satan in. Now look what we are. Now look where we are at. And I say, choose you this day whom you will serve, and put God back into our schools. Matthew 18:16 says, but whoso shall offend one of these little ones, which believes in me, it were better for him
Thank you, Ms. Brashears.
that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depths of the sea.
All right.
Thank you.
We are into other business. Would any board member like to request an item be added to a future agenda? All right. Item 13.02, nomination of board member to serve on the HEB Chamber of Commerce Governmental Relations Committee. Now, this is something that we typically comes up once a year, and we appoint someone to do it. I think currently it's Mr. Campos. And
Did you know?
I have done it. I have done it in the past, depending on whether it's a year that the legislature is in session. It kind of changes in terms of how much needs to be done. But typically,
There's no session this year.
yeah, there's no session this year, so it's probably not going to be a difficult job. But
Since you guys believe in me so much, I'd be more than happy to serve again.
And since you and I do advocacy work on our board goals, it makes sense for you to do that.
Well,
So
thank
you
you,
have more
Dawn.
time than I do.
Dawn's giving you the look.
I know.
All right, so is there a motion to nominate anyone for this position?
I move that the board nominate Fred Campos to serve as the board's representative on the HEB Chamber of Commerce Governmental Relations Committee.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to nominate Fred Campos to serve as the board's representative on the HEB Chamber of Commerce Governmental Relations Committee. Please vote. And that motion passes. Thank you, Fred, for continuing to serve in that role. And, yeah, and check your emails. All right. Next is approval of membership with the North Central Texas Council of Governments. Is there any discussion on this item? Then I will accept a motion.
I move the board approve the renewal of membership in the North Central Texas Council of Governments at a cost of $100 as budgeted in the board's budget.
I have a motion and a second that the board approves to renew the membership with the North Central Texas Council of Governments at a cost of $100 as budgeted in the board's budget. Please vote. That motion passes. All right, the next item is approval of the Texas Association of School Boards membership renewal. Is there any discussion on this item? I will accept a motion.
I move that the board approve the membership renewal with the Texas Association of School Boards at a cost of $11,000 as budgeted in the board's budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The board approves the membership renewal with the Texas Association of School Boards at a cost of $11,000 as budgeted in the board's budget. Please vote. And that motion passes. The next item is approval of Texas Association of School Boards Legal Assistance Fund membership renewal. Any discussion on this item? I'll accept a motion.
I move that the board approve participation in the Texas Association of School Board TASB's Legal Assistance Fund at a cost of $500 as budgeted in the board's budget.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. The board approves participation in the Texas Association of School Boards Legal Assistance Fund at a cost of $500 as budgeted in the board's budget. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, item 13.06, approval of Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors. Let's see, we need to cast our vote for one or multiple people who are on the ballot. We have 200 votes total to either give one person or divide, and I think Mr. Campos wants to speak on this.
So board, give me a few minutes I put a couple of things at your place. I want to go on record and maybe spend 3 or 5 minutes to just give you a quick update. One thing HEBISD does, which I think is awesome, is that we kind of divide and conquer in different areas, and this has been an area that I've been following for about 5 years. I've had the wonderful opportunity of visiting about 10 TAD board meetings over those last 5 years. I've had hundreds of conversations with Rich Diott, Gary Lasada, Catherine Wildman. Thank you guys for being here tonight. Would love to have conversations with you guys in the future. Where we are, just a quick recap, because this is quite an interesting election. It may not make sense. Prior to, going back 20 years ago, each entity, there's 61 of us, would actually cast votes. We'd mail them into TAD. They would calculate the votes based on the population size. And it probably was a very fair system because it was before iPhones and Google Docs and keeping track of things. This election is quite different than our elections. Imagine us being elected, but every day of early voting, every single vote was counted. There was only a limited top vote. So after a few days of early voting, maybe you determine who's going to win or lose. So quick recap. In 2019, all 61 entities had at least one vote. Not all the entities participated. There wasn't as much awareness back then. There were lots of entities that didn't even participate at all. But large entities got to vote last. And some felt that they overpowered their votes. And a lot of entities don't understand the process. So a couple things changed. There are some folks that, especially if you read Fort Worth Weekly, that consider this to be quite unusual. So they got together and passed House Bill 2403, which really changed the rules. They had 5 people come and speak, and they changed the rules that said that the big entities had to vote at their second public meeting. And one of those people that got to speak was Becky St. John from Grapevine Colleyville. Gary Lasada, Mayor Pat got to speak. In the race of 2019, we added 3 new board members. We added Gary Lasada, Rich Diott, and Catherine Wildman. And because the entities would vote and you could figure out who had the most votes, there was a tipping point. So if you guys remember 2 years ago, the race was probably already won. I missed this meeting 2 years ago. I went to Walt Disney World. I believe 2 of the candidates came and thanked us, even though the race wasn't over. The reason they could do that was because they had achieved enough of the votes that pretty much the race ends. So what Chandler's group did, what Matt Krause did in House Bill 2403 was try to prevent that. And they did an interesting thing by making the early entities have to vote early, with the understanding of making this more of a fair race. It didn't make it more of a fair race. What it did was it made it from the big entities sandbagging to now entities of our size being able to sandbag and help determine the race, which is why we have representatives here tonight. It's why everybody is, at least 8 entities have moved their decision-making here to December 13th. First off, I want to take a moment of privilege and say thank you guys for being here. I understand that when we think of TAD and we think of tax, it's the most important thing, and you're kind of in a thankless job. You hear a lot about the property values being too high, and you're dealing with all of those. It's kind of one of those things. If you don't hear anything, I know you guys are doing a good job. So hats off to both of you for serving, because I know how difficult it can be, and I've seen you guys. You've had somewhat of a little bit tumultuous couple years in that process, and definitely don't read Fort Worth Weekly. So where does that make us? Where are we at? Well, there's a couple things that changed, and while you guys are here, I want to state, I heard from a lot of mayors, especially of the 11 that didn't get a vote. That's different than when it was in 2019. So if you have any influence over that, it appears to be on a local level, you might want to at least give them 1 vote. They had 1 vote in 2019, and they don't have any votes today. So what's happened is a shift from large to small. The large entities determine it, and so here's what happened, and this is why I want to bring this to our recommendation. We had 11 candidates in it, and as soon as a couple people voted, candidates immediately were eliminated even before we had a chance. And a perfect example of that is our mayor in Bedford, Jim Griffin. By the time I talked to him on the phone, his race was over. There are people like Mayor Griffin and Rocky, because there's a limited number of votes and because they vote, certain entities vote early, it squeezes in who's allowed to vote. So no amount of votes today would elect Jim Griffin or most of these people. In fact, today, there's really only 6 candidates going for 5 seats.
Can you list those 6 candidates, please?
Yes. And my apologies for that. Now, in addition to listing those 6 candidates, Mr. Jordan has already won. And it's my understanding, gentlemen, when we deal with North Richland Hills, that Ms. Wildman has probably already won. So we are now have 3 seats and we have 4 candidates, and that's Gary Lasada, Rich Diott, Mr. Martinez, and Mr. Pompa. And it's kind of like a round robin. Those 4 individuals are going for 3 seats. So that's what we have to decide here today, or that's what,
Between those lists that you
really,
just listed.
anything outside of that is either adding to somebody that's already won or adding to someone who has no chance of winning. Okay?
So somebody like Jim Griffin,
It's not, shouldn't even be considered.
Technically, that is true.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear you say.
Okay, now, but here's the end of the story, which these guys can attest to as well. All the entities that are voting today, which includes our friends over at Carroll ISD, some of our others tonight, because there is one entity that votes tomorrow, and that's Mansfield ISD.
Okay.
Now, right, wrong, or indifferent, we could talk about a rule change, but for this election, Mansfield ISD pretty much gets to determine it. We have two choices here tonight. Well, first off, let me back up. One final thing. I promise I'll wrap this up and make a recommendation. In 2019, we were pushing for Gary Lasada and for Rich Diot, both of which were elected and served their full terms. And we as a board know continuity is really good, right? And Ms. Wildman's in here. These two gentlemen currently serve on the board, but they've been added to the board in addition to that. I wish we were in a situation where there were 5 seats and you 5 all made it. One of you is not going to make it, and that's not fair, but that's the way this is. If all of the entities vote today and they vote what they want, then Mansfield gets to determine that. So we have one of two choices. We either pick our favorite, or we split the votes, which is what has been suggested, and then we pass it to our friends in Mansfield to finish off. Now, here's my thought process on this whole thing. We asked the legislators to help the big entities not sandbag and not put their two down and that's their person. And yet we have now shifted that to either we do the exact same thing that we asked them not to let the big ones do, or we treat this vote the way we normally would, and we would split it for the candidates that we want, and then we pass it to our friends in a group and let Mansfield ISD finish it out.
well, it's just Mansfield gets to choose because they're the last to vote.
That's correct. Now, I want to say one thing, and I don't want to steal somebody's thunder. Obviously, Chandler Crouch and Joe Bennett and Becky St. John and some others had the legislator make a change. They will probably change it again before this election occurs in 2023. And I can tell you that I've heard some fantastic suggestions that will probably make this more equally fair, but that's the future.
Yep.
We have to stick to the rules that we're dealing with today. So, final thought. If we were not thinking like this, I would have suggested that we give votes to Gary Lasada, to Rich Diot, and to Jim Griffith. You're probably saying, and that's up for debate, why would we cast votes for someone that has no impact on this race? Well, if this had been a fair race, I think he would have been a fantastic candidate, an excellent candidate for that. We are HEBISD. We're a unit that works together and has support. I can tell you that he was very dismayed, and I sat down and had a long conversation with him and said, Mr. Griffin, I think you're a fabulous candidate, but the math doesn't add up for you to even have a chance to do this. But here's the thing, and this is the funny thing. The entities that vote today are probably still going to pass it to Mansfield. So I'm not saying that this doesn't matter what we do, but what I'm saying is that Mansfield plays a huge part in this, only because that's the way it is. I will add one final thought to Mr. Pompa and to Mr. Martinez. You guys are a team, and take this as feedback coming from me, and please have my information because I follow you guys greatly, and I would love to help you. Either both of you are going to be on the board or one of you are going to be on the board. I asked Rich and Gary individually, okay, we're kind of a PDSA group, which of the two of you they thought they could work the best with.
Okay.
Okay, never mind.
I don't think we need to.
You got it. Okay.
So can we,
Yeah, we don't need to be.
Just-
Fair enough, fair enough.
how are we gonna do our vote? Like, if I wanna give my input as to who I would like us to vote for, how are we doing it?
No,
What's
you
the
can give your
process?
input. We have 200 votes, and we can divide those up between all of them or one of them, but the board has to vote on one.
That's what I'm saying. What is
yeah,
our
so-
process that we're gonna use to figure out which way we're gonna do it and which candidates we're gonna select?
Yeah, well, I think Fred probably has his recommendation. I'm
Fair
open to hear anybody else and anything that they'd like to add to the conversation. You know, last year, just to say it like it was, Fred did all the research and we took Fred's recommendation and we went with that. Since then, I've heard good and bad about what we did last year, and that, you know, not everybody's thrilled with us in the way that we went about last year. So, I mean, I think the only way to do this type of thing right is for us as a board to decide who we think would be the best person on the board, and not, and I mean, we can spend a lot of time counting votes and stuff and trying to make our voice more important.
And we
but
can't
I-
worry about anybody else's votes,
But I
just
think we
ours.
more or less
Right.
have to just vote for who we think would do the best job on this board and give those people our support.
Right.
So,
Then my vote in that is for Rich and Gary.
all right, anybody else have any?
I prefer to vote for people who came, took time out of their day to come and talk to us. So my vote would be for, Ms. Martinez and Mr. Pompa, and I'm okay with Mr. Lasada as well. So that would be my recommendation.
I think I agree with Don.
Well, if Mansfield's deciding it doesn't make a difference, I'm voting for Jim Griffin. He was on the foundation, he's done, I know him, he's done most of our district. I'm giving him a vote of confidence. If Mansfield decided it doesn't make any difference what we do.
We can do it 4 ways if we want to. We can pick 4 candidates if we want.
Yeah,
We
we
can pick as
can.
many as we want, so I'm okay with adding him and just splitting it by 4.
I thought we could only pick 3. So
You can
No, you
pick
can
as
pick as
many,
many
you
as
can
you
pick
want.
all of
You
them.
can
if
pick
you
all
want
of
to.
them, but we have
All
200
these
votes.
on the
So,
ballot, you can pick all of them. Vote for, split your vote among all of them if you wanted to.
Well, if we're gonna do that, if we've got 5 candidates, why don't we give 40 to each of Lasada, Diop, Martinez, Pompa, and Griffin?
How did we get to 5?
3 that's listed here, and add Martinez and Griffin. Or no, Pompa. Martinez and
see.
Pompa.
That's fine. I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that, too.
so that was 40 to Martinez, 40 to Pompa, 40 to Lasada, 40 to Ott, 40 to Griffin.
Yep.
Give us just a minute to get the motion.
What are your thoughts?
That's on me. Does that screw up any of the
Yeah.
outcome?
Yeah.
In what way?
Electable within the 225 votes of Mansfield. You choose to, I was kind of evening it out past the level.
I really wish they would have showed up tonight.
I thought, yeah, totally.
All right, I'll accept the motion.
I move that the board cast 40 votes for Jim Griffin, 40 votes for Gary Lasada, 40 votes for Rich Diott, 40 votes for J.R. Martinez, 40 votes for Tony Pompa for the Board of Tarrant Appraisal District.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. The board casts 40 votes for RJ Martinez, 40 votes for Tony Pompa, 40 votes for Gary Lasada, 40 votes for Rich Diot, and 40 votes for Jim Griffin for the Board of Tarrant Appraisal District. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right. At this time, the board is going to adjourn into closed session. Pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551, the board will adjourn in closed session for purposes of Section 551.071 to 551.074.
Oh, because they're leaving.
Are y'all going straight in, or are you gonna take a break?
Yeah, you guys want 5?
I asked to see the video. Anybody else want to see the video?
Huh?
Steve,
I want to see the video that's going out
Steve, I
tomorrow.
have plenty to do, so I can hang.
Well, it's going to be a while, though.
We'll probably, I don't know how long we'll be back there. At least 20, 30 minutes, but.
Yeah, can you show it? Yeah? Yeah? The one that's going out tomorrow to the employees?
Hang on. Probably not a good idea.
Good. How are you, Tony? Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while. Good. Good. Yours?
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah. Still. Oh, did you?
Just send it to me, that's fine, I just want to see it.
Oh, that must be
I didn't mean to
hectic.
cause any issue.
That must be hectic.
She can,
Oh, thank you. We appreciate it. Yeah, we appreciate it. Yeah. And I'm sure you'll get on this board, and thank you for serving on that, because that's not something I think I could.
Where are we going?
Rich had a lot more votes. He did. But they have 225. Oh, really? They may split them. More than likely, they probably. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Good night.
Everyone said that today, and I just have to say, I look amazing. All you haters.
I didn't say you don't look amazing.
wasn't he?